right. Let's get this lecture on the road. So, basically today, yeah, so let me pull up an Inkscape for just a second. And so, let's talk about stuff. Maybe size 30. So project 3 is out. It's been out, but it's out. It's due December 4th. So it may be hard, so just remember that there's probably not going to be an extension on project 3. If I do, it's going to most be like a few days max. So the reason is because once the end of the semester happens, everything has to be done. And so the final exam has to start and end on the day of the final. So the day of the final is going to be the last day. So I think, what is the day of the final? I guess I could pull up the syllabus and check. Let's see here. Should have probably pulled this up before, but yeah, I think the 16th is right. I'm just slow at pulling stuff up sometimes. So this is the day of the final. So that means that 11:59 p.m. is the last second of this class, right? So that means that everything has to be turned in by then. So let's see. The 16th is a Wednesday, so I guess I could technically give a few extra days on the project if I really wanted to, but the point is not that. The point is just that this is the last second of the class. So make sure that you get your final exam in on the due date, right? On the due date, because it will be harder and harder for me to do anything about that. Okay. Yeah, so the format is going to be the same. I'll probably release it the day after. Maybe I'll probably release it like December 5th, and then it'll be due the 16th. So on the final exam, there's gonna be like no extensions, okay? And that's just, that's not me. That's literally just the course. I can't have you working past 11:59:59 on December 16th. So you'll have a little bit of extra time built into the final, but after the final exam, this class is done. Okay, so let's do some other announcements for today. No idea how many questions are going to be on it. No idea. I mean, I put 5 questions on both of the midterms. I might make the final exam like 8 questions. So maybe 8 programming questions on the final. Maybe. I don't want to do 10. 10 is too much, probably. I don't want to do 5 because then each problem is worth an absolute monster of points. Right? So that's kind of, so I'm going to say approximately 8, but you can't quote me on that since I haven't written it yet. So, okay, and then the other thing to say is that we, no class on Wednesday of this week, mainly because it's Thanksgiving week. During a standard semester, I mean, maybe I can. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know how much people liked that. I think a lot of people were saying that, oh, the hard problems were easy and the easy problems were hard. But, I mean, I'll write down what I think each problem is and, like, relatively, Yeah, see, well, you can always ignore it, I guess. See, there's for any person who likes a thing, there's another person who dislikes that thing. You found it easier without the difficulty. Huh. Okay, yeah, I have no idea. I mean, I was just roughly guesstimating what I thought that people would think, right? I was just like, that was my guess of what a student get difficulty on, you know, on the problem would be. So that's the problem, is that I had to run it through the guess function. It can be unreliable. So yeah, so no class Wednesday this week. I think 99% of the way to, so I think the way to interpret it was probably like easy problems means like a 30-minute solution. Like medium was you might have to think first, so give it a day or so before jumping in. And hard meant start immediately. Don't wait, right? Because hard problems, the thing is that the solution for a hard problem is no longer than the solution for a medium problem or an easy problem. Generally, all the problems have relatively short solutions. Like, the length of the solution is not tied to difficulty, right? So, okay. Yeah, anyway, no class on Wednesday. We have no labs or discussion this week. Next week, we'll have the last lab. What else do I want to say? I think that's basically it, right? We have all of this stuff. Well, given that today is all about the project, I will talk about that, yes. So, okay. I think that's basically what. Why did I not put it? I don't know. So, okay. Okay, so I think that's it for announcements. I think I'll talk about the rest of... And now let's just talk about the project. Okay, let me find the project. I think I stuck it somewhere. I think it's right here. Yes. So, let me just read through the project, and then maybe I'll show you my project running, and I'll just show you some examples of stuff, and then we'll talk about, like, you know, how to code and blah blah blah, and then where the only this project, basically there's one function that's actually really important, and the rest of it is just kind of just administrative filler. A lot of it is just making sure everything else is going to work so that your connect function works. So, you know, I'm kind of giving it away. Everything, the connect function is really the thing. And so let's go through the project. So, of course, this falls under academic integrity policy. Basically, this means don't collaborate, right? But also, it also means please don't post it on Chegg. If you do, I will not be happy. And if I ever find out who posts things on Chegg, they get automatic F in the class. So, all right. Yeah, basically it's... Well, there are paths to figuring it out, but I won't say more than that. Okay, so I've given you two approaches to this project. I've given you the class-based approach and the non-class-based approach. If you do the class-based approach, you're going to submit 3 files because each file itself is a class, and then the driver code is in the main of network.py. If you're doing it all without classes, then you just shove all of your code into network.py. All right. I mean, so in terms of which one is harder, which one, I mean, I think that, you know, it's going to be a matter of personal opinion, but I think, well, my first solution I wrote using classes because that's how I usually think of things. Like, I like to think of the phone objects as a class, the switchboard objects as a class, and the network object as a class. And then I like to understand the relationship between those classes. I like to think of the functions that I'll need to create. And then I think of basically everything. Now, of course, for the project, I've done a lot of work for you in a sense, because what I've done is so let me just show you. Here's an old switchboard system. So there's an interesting reason why the job was mainly for women, apparently. This was actually not an accident. There's a reason why all of these people are women here. So the secret reason is that apparently the original switchboard operators in the 1800s were men, and apparently they were too vulgar and too mean on the system. They couldn't be trusted, and they would play too many pranks on people who wanted to connect calls. So, yeah. Okay, so here's a little diagram that I've drawn. Now, this diagram is not the only possible thing. This is just one example of a switchboard network. So the switchboard is basically, it's one of these things, right? Where you have a person, or really now, so there are technically still switchboards in the universe. They're just all done electronically now. There used to be mechanical switchboards after these women were actually, you see, she had a rank. This was a military switchboard in the 40s during World War II. But after about the 1940s, when they went into the 1950s, they had mechanical ones, and finally computers replaced all of it. So now basically switchboards are just servers. But anyway, so we're gonna pretend like we don't really care exactly what the mechanism is, you know, that makes a switchboard work. What we're going to do is we're just going to have a bunch of phones that are connected to switchboards. A phone must be connected to exactly one switchboard. It cannot be connected to 2. That's how it works. Each one of these is a phone number, right? And each one is connected to a switchboard. And so, can you just call it a switch? You can call it whatever you like. Unless, of course, you use the class-based solution, in which case, call it a switchboard. So here's the thing. I was thinking of making this project a little different, where a trunk line would have a certain number of connections that it could have. But you see, a trunk line here can have as many connections as you want. So if this phone, say, wants to call this phone, then the way to do it is this phone contacts its switchboard, and it tells it, hey, I want to make a phone call. So then the switchboard says, okay, hey, I want to connect this phone number with a destination phone number. So it searches through all of its trunk lines, and it looks for a trunk line that's connected to, and so basically each trunk line connects it to another switchboard. So it asks that switchboard, hey, can you connect this call? And if there's another switchboard, it'd be like, hey, can you connect this call? Hey, can you connect this call? Until it finds one of the switchboards that can connect the call, at which point it connects the call. So then it'll connect through all the trunk lines all the way to the other phone, and that's how it works. So basically, each switchboard is basically taking care of the quote-unquote long distance calls. That's used to be what the difference was between like a local call back in the days when local calls existed and a long distance call. So the reason why, so I actually did have a trunk line class, but you don't need one because a trunk line is basically just, in this case, it's just going to be a list of other switchboards that you're connected to, right? So you don't really need, or a dictionary of other switchboards, or however you want to store it. So some collection, you could make it, can you have as many trunk lines as you want? Yes, so I'm going to draw some situations that are different than this one. This one is just a situation that I thought was easy, but let's draw some other situations that you can have, okay? Let's pull this up. So here is my little trunk line graphic, or my little switchboard graphic that I made. I colored it for some reason, but that was a mistake. I was gonna, there we go. So I was gonna try to make it all nice and colorful, but that was garbage. So, okay, let's get rid of the page border, close. All right. So let's say that you want a different thing. So now I'm just gonna look at a single switchboard. We're not gonna look at individual phone numbers anymore. We're just going to look at a bunch of switchboards, and I'm going to put them in different configurations. I just want to show you all the different possibilities that we can have. So, so for instance, like here is a set of possibilities for switchboards, right? You can connect them like this, and say this one's connected to this one. This is a possible switchboard graph, right? So yeah, I already did that part for you. I already made the area code, because area code is part of the switchboard constructor. So, so here's one, right? So if a phone number from this switchboard wants to call something here, right, it would have to, it connects to this one. It only has one switchboard in its network. Well, let's actually put some other switchboards in its network so that it doesn't know exactly which one it has to call. So let's say that first it calls say you're at a phone number here and you want to connect to here. So let's make this, I think I can sort it to the bottom, right? Move to layer, crap, never mind. Wait, where the heck did the text go? Oh, there it is. Oh well, okay. Let's not color anything. So I want to go to this one. Let's put a star on it. There we go. I want to start here, and I want to end. I don't know, it doesn't seem to be wanting to do the different levels. Okay, so we want to start here and we want to end here. So how do we do that? Right, so what we want to do is we want to start here and we want to search through, say, this one first. We ask, do you have any connections to this one? It searches, 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 it doesn't. And then it searches here and it says, do you have any connections? No. Do you have any connections? No. And then finally it asks this one. It says, do you have any connections? And then this one says, hey, let me check. So this one has to go, hey, friend up here, do you have any connections? And it says, hey, let me check. And let's pretend like it doesn't know which one, so it goes down here first. This search call would be recursive, yes. And the reason that it has to be recursive is, well, it doesn't have to be recursive, except that it's required in the project description. You must make it recursive. So it's also way easier to do it in a recursive call. So this is the recursion part, right? And the reason is because when you search through all the children, you basically have to say, if I'm at this one, I basically say I have a connect function, right? Let's say that I have a connect function. And so if I call connect here, it's going to have to call connect here, it calls connect here, it calls connect here. And these all return false or none or no path or whatever. So these are all going to return false, right? Or what, you know, no path. And so then this one's going to call the connect function here, right, on this switchboard, which is going to call the connect function here on this switchboard, which is then going to call the connect function on this one, which is going to be a connect no path, because here it reaches the end. It knows that it doesn't have any more, there's no switchboards connected to this one, and there's no additional path there's nowhere to go, and it's not the right area code. And so now it's going to call connect here. So connect here says, hey, wait, I'm the right area code, right? So then it checks, do I have the phone number, right? If yes, return me as part of the path. Else, return probably none or no path or whatever, right? So that's basically how this has to work. So, okay. So that's basically how this thing works, right? And so this one returns no path, but this one returns a connect, say like some kind of success. Right, so this returns connect success. So then this one is then going to have to return connect success, which is then going to have to return, success. And finally here, success. And at that point, you connect the two phones, right? So then there's a phone here. And there's a phone here. And so at the very end, once the connect success comes back, you basically connect those two phones, and they're connected along this path. And that's the point of this project, right? That's the whole thing. What do you mean the same type of classes? Oh, you mean in 202? Yeah, I mean, it's the same. So, okay. So basically, that's the idea here, right? Well, for that, you'll have to look in the project description, right? So, okay. All right, so let's draw out some other switchboard configurations, and let me just show you some things that can happen, so you understand how things can work. So you can have, say, a bunch of switchboards that are connected like this, right? So all of these are connected, and then you could have, say, an entirely separate network, well, quasi-separate network over here, right, that are not connected. So basically, if you have a phone here, right, here's our start phone, and here's our end phone. Let's make it red. And so if this one here is going to try to call this one, then what's going to have to happen is it's going to try to connect. So it's going to try, connect here. And so then it's going to try to connect here. And then it's going to try to connect here. Now here is the other part of the problem. So here we're talking about two things at once. So here we've run connect here, then we've run connect here, then we've run connect here. And so what's going to have to happen is your connect function is going to have to remember which switchboards you've already talked to. So connect needs to remember which switchboards you've already visited and checked. Because if you have already visited and checked one, then you don't want to keep doing it, right? You don't want to end up in some kind of infinite loop or cycle, right, in your graph. And so let me explain why this would happen. Is like if you don't have any way to check, whether the switchboard is connected, then what's going to happen is you're going to connect here, you're going to connect here, you're going to connect here. And then what's going to happen is it's going to say, oh, well, I have to connect to, say, this one, right? So it's going to try the connect function here again, which if it doesn't remember that it's already tried this one, or this one is the start one, then it's going to say, oh, well, now I've got to check this one. 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 So it's going to go around and around forever. So that's one of the problems. The other problem is that it can come back on itself, right? like what can end up happening is if you don't remember things where you've been, then if you try to go back, right, and it says connect gets to here, and then the first thing that connect does is says, oh wait, I haven't looked along this edge yet, right? Even though this is the edge you just came in on, it can call connect here, and then connect can call this one here again, and then connect can call this one, connect calls this one, connect calls this one, connect calls this, right? And so then you'll just get infinite recursion or whatever you get. Basically, either an infinite recursion, and of course in Python you don't actually get infinite recursion, you get a recursion limit where it stops you after 1,000 goes or so. Right? And so you'll just be going back and forth between these two switchboards. So that's why you need to have some kind of way to remember where you've been. And so there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. You can add some flags into the switchboard class if you want, like a visited thing in the connect object. But then you have to make sure to set them all back to false between different connects. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to basically remember literally each switchboard in some kind of collection, right? And you know, by collection, there's two types of collection in Python that I usually talk about. You know, lists or dictionaries. So that's basically that. Anyway, so now that I've talked about the infinite recursion stuff, so now that it remembers not to go back to these other switchboards, basically, once it does this and it says this connect failed, right? Because it's not allowed to connect back to there. This connect failed because it's not allowed to connect back to there, and this one it came from, so it's not allowed to connect there. And this one gets connect failed because it's not allowed to go there because that already was tried. This one was already tried, so it's run out of options, right? There's no way to jump from here to here. There's no way to jump from here to here. So given that there's no way to jump, you basically tell the phone user, basically you just print out on the screen. So you tell the phone, you know, so you don't connect, no phone call happens, right? So that's basically the two things that can happen. So it's possible that the whole reason why you need the connect function is not because there are networks where you can connect. The reason is because you need to see if you can actually connect at all, and there are networks like this where you can't. Right, so there's no way to get from here to here. But also, if you had, say, this is your phone where you started, right? Not every call is going to fail to that red phone, right? Because there's phones that are connected in the same network. So basically, here, this green phone can connect because it can call connect here, right? And then it will call connect. I'll just say it does it in the same order. Call connect here, then it'll call connect here. And then this connect says, hey, wait, I got the phone, I got the destination, success. So then it returns whatever success means, either the path or the phone or the whatever, right? It returns some kind of success, and then this one returns connect success. And so then this one gets the connect success, and then you do connect green to red and start the call. So the other thing that you have to check, right? There's one other thing you have to check. Yes, the connect function or some helper function, right? So either connect is recursive or the connect, yeah, basically, you're allowed to write some helper function so, you know, that you can, but there has to be, connect has to probably call some kind of recursive thing. If the phone is on, yeah, that's exactly right. So basically, if green and red are talking, and you now have, let's say, purple here is connected here, and so now we're going to do another call. So now it's going to try to connect, and so then it's going to call this one. It's going to say connect, but then this switchboard says, hey, wait, like I'm the right switchboard. I have the phone number. But that phone number is already on a call, so basically, you know, this is when you would basically return the busy signal, right? So you don't connect the phones. Okay. So yeah, that's the this is basically how this should work. All right. Okay. So that's basically how this project. Yeah, I agree. Either you need to send me an email or you need to talk to an advisor, right? Are you actually a student currently, or that kind of thing? Anyway, so all right, so let us do something, right? Let's figure out. Let's go back. So now that we kind of understand how the project is supposed to work in a theoretical way, let's go back and look at the description of the implementation a little bit. So basically, I have everything so that it's some kind of command line stuff. So basically, you run switch add and you type in an area code, right? Or switch connect and you type in an area code or 2 area codes. So basically, this creates a trunk line between area code 1 and area code 2. And remember, a trunk line is just a connection. So it's just a fancy way of saying that area code 1 is connected directly to area code 2, right? You can still connect a phone call if it has to go through a bunch of different area codes to get there, but you can't connect a phone call if they're just not connected in the network. So, and then just like you had a switch add, you'll have a phone add. I don't know why I didn't just make it add phone and add switch and connect switch, but I did it this way. And I did it this way in my implementation because I don't know, and then I stuck with it. So that's what you're stuck with. Okay, and so this one, basically the idea here is that this specifies the phone number type of requirement, where you have the area code, this is required, and then a hyphen is required, and then you're allowed to have as many parts as of the phone number as you want, so you can have a phone number that's like, 240, 123, 123, 123, 123, all separated by hyphens. It really shouldn't matter, as long as you have a way to track phone numbers. I mean, if you, so don't be strict about the number of digits in a phone number. So someone can have the phone number like 410-1. They can literally be phone number 1. Well, so I don't know that I want to require a certain number of helper functions just because it's the project that I have here is essentially the area code is 3 digits, though again, actually the area code, at least in my implementation, doesn't have to be 3 digits. It can just be any number of digits. So let's start the call, and that's 2 phone numbers, right? And so the phone numbers have area codes attached to them. So it's however you've encoded your phone numbers. 410 is definitely a Maryland area code. Okay. So, yep. So yeah, start call takes 2 phone numbers. End call. So this is a little bit of a tricky part. Right? So this one takes any one of the 2 phone numbers, right? So if it basically start call, so start call is where it tries to call connect, right? Because once you start a call, that's what it's going to be, right? So here's where it says connecting a call requires a recursive blah 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 blah, right? So end call, I don't think end call actually has to be recursive if you're careful. The point is that if you remember enough about the phone call, you don't have to make it recursive. You don't have to find the phone again. But the point is that end call should disconnect the 2 different numbers. So basically, if one person hangs up, the other person's phone should also be hung up, right? And so that's what end call is supposed to do here. So that's that, and it doesn't have to be the phone number 1. It can be, you can hang up on this one or you can hang up on this one. It's just that I call this phone number 1 because there is only one phone number here. Technically, I could just take that off, I guess. So, well, I haven't gotten there yet. And then display, it should just output everything. I'll show you what my display does, and then we'll go through that. And so network save, these are the two file things that you have to do. So network save, this is a network in a file, so basically you give it a file name. I've completely basically legalized two packages. You can use CSV, you can use JSON. The TAs are not required to help you with either one. So if you use those packages, make sure you know what you're doing with them. If you don't use those packages, then you have to decide on the file format, right? Even if you use CSV or JSON, you technically have to decide on the file format, but you still have to choose a file format which works for your project. And the requirement for your file format is not that we can load it with our program, but that your own program can reload it, right? So yeah, that's the requirement here. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that because I haven't taught it, most people are not going to be familiar with them. But I feel like if you want to use them, you're allowed to use them. If you what other options are there besides CSV and JSON? You don't have to use either one, but those are the only two modules that you're allowed to import. There are way more yeah, just a plain text file is fine if you have some way to do it that way. Whatever you want to do. It's just if you want to use these two, then you're allowed, right? So, and then network load is just the corresponding function that loads the network. And the only thing about it is, remember that you have to specify the format. Whenever you load a network, you should delete the so I'll just bold that. So make sure that whenever you load a network, it deletes the previous one, right? So yeah, I mean, I just used JSON mainly because I was uber lazy. But of course, you're all gonna say, you know, I don't know JSON. And so the answer to that is that I might do a little JSON tutorial. What is the point of saving it if you clear it? The point here is that, wait, what? So no, this does not clear, right? That's in save. And then here in network load, if you had a network in there before you loaded the file, clear that one out, new network, right? New area codes, new phone numbers, new everything, new connections, everything. The reason is just, this is entirely for testing purposes, right? You might actually, in real life, if you were building a project like this, have stuff like this. But, yeah. Well, so that's the thing, right? The first time you're going to have to make your network with the commands, right? There's no way to load a network into your program unless you already have a saved file. So the only thing you can do, the first thing you have to do is get at least switch add, switch connect, and phone add working. You don't actually have to get start call and end call working before you do the save and load. So you can do just the adding of phones, adding of switches, and the connecting of the switchboards. If all of that works, then you should be able to save a file, right? And so if you save a file, then you can then load that file, and that's how you should do it. So that's how we're going to test it. What we're going to do in our test code is we're going to create a network using the commands, and then we're going to dump it to a file, and then we're going to close your program, reopen your program, and load that file again. And so that's how we're going to test out whether your load file works. And so your load file, yeah, it's just got to work with your own program, right? Because as I say, when you're making your own file format, if I take your file or my file and run it on a different program, it's just going to break it. There's absolutely no way to guarantee it. So the structure of the network should be saved, but the phone-to-phone connections can be lost. So this does not mean that the trunk lines can be lost. Those have to be remembered. But the phone-to-phone connections, like if calls are going on, pretend like this is the entire phone network going down, right? So what I mean by that is when you load a phone network, you don't want to load the fact that before a phone network went down, two people were talking on the phone. What you want to do is actually hang up their phones and make them call each other again. If you have a failure that bad, you'd rather them just have to call each other, because you don't want to remember, like, you don't want to have to remember if the phones are actually off the hook or anything, because that's, well, A, it's more work for the project, but B, like, in the real world, it's probably what you'd want to do as well. Oh, does it? Oh, it's nothing like Smart House. It is a... right? I mean, it's almost duplicate, right? It's the same thing. All right. Can you add parameters to connect call? Yeah, sure. So, self number switchboard. So, don't change this one, because a phone needs a number and it needs a switchboard. So, don't bother that. Just I think. Well, I hope you don't copy paste. You have to do a little more work than that. But, So connect here, I know that there's some questions about how connect should work. So if you think about it, this connect function is you picking the phone off the hook and dialing the number, right? So what does this connection function do, right? This connection function should call the switchboard, right? And that's the reason why I say don't forget the switchboard, because if a phone remembers its switchboard, remembers. In real life, a phone doesn't really remember its switchboard, it's just physically wired to it. But in Python, in this kind of thing, you have to remember the switchboard. So, okay, you remember the switchboard, you pick up the phone, and this is what they do. So you'll have to put in the area code and the other phone number, and then you just call, right? And so this function can be recursive, or it doesn't have to be, right? That's the thing. There's two connect functions. Can you have a class within a class? You can do it in Python. It's not required for this project, not allowed for this project, and generally a bad idea unless you know exactly what you're doing anyway. So, okay, so this connect function can be recursive, or it doesn't have to be. If this function is not recursive, then the switchboard connect has to be recursive, right? So that's the thing. Either this function is recursive, or the other function is recursive, okay? And then disconnect should basically disconnect this phone and the other end. And so that's this one, yeah. So you'll probably have to add some data members to phone, right? Because my starter code for phone, let me see if I can pull that up without showing everything. Oh good, it's on a different screen, so I can actually look it up now. So, yeah, so here it says you'll probably need to add more parameters or attributes or whatever you want to call them, more variables into this class. The reason why is because I had more stuff in here and I deleted it. I deleted it so that you have to decide, right? That's part of the project. You have to determine what you need. And then here, basically, here's the connect function and the disconnect function. So your job is to remove this pass and stick in some useful code into here. Okay, that's your duty. That's what the project wants you to do. Okay. So now let's look at the switchboard class, real quick. So, here, this is just a constructor. So the only thing that I needed for my switchboard constructor was the area code. So that's all I took. That's all you really need. Oh, actually, so I have this previous codes thing here. That's where I remembered the previous path. Right? So previous codes is probably some connection of previous scanned area codes to prevent an infinite recursion. So technically you don't need to add anything to the connect call function. If you want to add something to the connect call function, you can, but you don't have to. So add trunk connection, that's basically just switch connect. Add phone. So add phone should create, well, it even says here, you should create a phone object, add it to your collection, don't create duplicates. So if someone's trying to create a phone number, make sure there's no collisions, right? Someone can have the same phone number in 2 different area codes, but you can't have the same phone number connected to the same switchboard because each switchboard has its own area code. So this function has to be recursive. Now, as I say, this function can be recursive, or the connect function can be recursive. I made this function my recursive function, so that's why I put this here. If your other connect function is recursive and this one isn't, then that's fine too. It's just one of the 2 functions has to be recursive, right? So that's why I put this marking here. And then finally, here's your network stuff. So basically, this is not a shock, right? This should not be a shock. Init should this should create a network. Load network should call your load file thing. Save file or save network. Add a switchboard, that should create a new switchboard. Duplication just means that you're not allowed to duplicate area codes. So if I try to create a 410 area code and then I try to do it again, it should fail. Because I remember that everything is being determined by area code. So yeah, and so then basically adding a switchboard, yep. And so connecting switchboards, you choose them by area code, and then you'll add a trunk line between them, as Sammy just said. And then display. So I think instead of really talking too much about display, do you print a line? I don't really know what that means. Okay. So then here's the files. I'll skip that part. Here's some sample output, which I'll skip. Here's the generalized rubric. So basically switch add is pretty easy, so that should be like 5 points. Display functionality, this actually takes a lot of work to get everything working right. I shouldn't say it takes a lot of work. It's not hard, but it's something that's going to take a lot of code. At least my display function's kind of long, just because I wanted everything to output nicely. So 5 points for that. I mean, the amount of work is more like a 10-point thing, but whatever. Switch connect, connecting 2 switchboards, that's 10 points. Adding phones, 10 points. Starting call. Why is this 25 points, right? This is 25 points not because start call is like the only function in the project, but because it calls the most important function in the project, connect or connect call or whatever you want to call them, right? It calls the connect call pair. And so because it calls these functions, that's why this one is the real important thing. And then end call functionality, that should be pretty easy. So you see that there's, in the start call, end call, there's 40 points. So most of the project is in there. So make sure you get that working. Technically, you could have no network save functionality and still get an 80 on this project, right? So yeah. Not that you should skip that, right? But just saying, like, what thing is more valuable? Start call, end call, or files? Start call, end call is worth twice of files. So yeah, you can technically get an 80% just without touching files at all, though I don't recommend that. Anyway, yeah, so network save, network load, that's 20 points. I think that's reasonable for your first major file I/O thing, I guess, other than the exam or whatever, where you've done a little bit. Coding standards, 10 points, so be good, Okay, that's really it. That is really it. I've modified the allowed built-ins a little bit, so you notice here there's some file reads. I threw in JSON and CSV as possible things, and that's really what I've done, right? That's what I've done. Forbidden, I don't think I've changed it. Let's just go through it really quick to see if there's anything here that I need to unforbid. Any, all, breakpoint callable, class method compile, exec, delete attribute, div mod, enumerate, filter, map, max, min. I mean, I don't really care about max and min at this point, but whatever. I mean, the recursion, let's see how long my connect function was, and I'll tell you. So my connect call function is 20 lines of code with about 5 spaces, so it's like 15 lines overall. And there is, the recursive part is 5 lines. So yeah. How long is my display? I don't know. I guess I'd have to look. Display. Oh, never mind. My display is only 10 lines. Actually, it's like 8 lines. So I guess I totally lied. I can release it after all the extensions are finished. I can't talk. I mean, I don't want to talk about it right now because there's still a few extensions out that I don't want to interfere with. Okay. Yeah, I think basically this should be fine. I don't really know. I think this should be okay, right? I mean, I don't think most of the stuff like memory view, set attribute, like set vars, type, super, sum, I think, static method, class method. Like, if you're using them callable, if you're using any of those, you're definitely doing it wrong, right? Like, if you're using any of those, you're definitely doing it wrong. And then for the rest of it, I feel like most of it is just kind of unhelpful. Like, this converts stuff to octal, which I guess, you know what, let's take it off the banned list. Who cares? Well, I mean, whatever, right? I mean, yeah, it doesn't need to be banned, but don't use octal. I don't know why you would be using octal. Why are you... Well, so whenever we talk about a certain feature of the language and we say, why don't I teach X, right? Here's the thing. How many people in this class are who think I've taught too many things, right? That's the main question. There's at least about 50% of people who, if I say, like, should I teach more concepts? People would rebel, right? So they'd be like, no, don't, we're good, we're fine, we don't need more. And so that's just one of those things that I just didn't teach this semester. There's nothing really wrong with enumerate. I use it all the time. It's just something that was traditionally not used in this course. I do want to add it back in, but the problem is that, like, if I use it in the initial for loop lectures, I think we're going to get a lot more people confused on for loops. And if I then, towards the end of the class, I really don't care, but I mean, yeah, it's something I've definitely thought about quite a lot. The rest of this stuff is really stuff that you shouldn't be using anyway. Like, if you use it, then you're kind of doing it wrong. Okay. Yeah, same thing with these keywords. Global, lambda, non-local, raise, try, yield. Definitely don't use them. Any of these are just, I guess as you can use, because you can use with now. Can you use is numeric? Sure. I really don't care about that. Like, that's not the point. Okay, so I think that's basically all I wanted to say about the project as the project. Yep, that's what I was talking about. Okay. So let me do just a little bit of a tutorial on the oh my. Okay. Okay. I think for the rest of the lecture, I'm going to do what I always do, and we're not going to do exceptions. Yeah, if you load the wrong file, your program is just going to throw an OS error, and it's just going to crash. So what we are going to do, let's do a little bit of a CSV JSON tutorial. So I actually have another JSON tutorial that I've done for previous semesters, so I can just upload that and show you guys that. It was done for a different project, but you can kind of get a good idea about how to do it. So let's talk about, is there going to be a couple of sorting problems? I don't know. I haven't written it yet. So, do you cover web scraping in this class? Not really. I mean, it's one of the special topics that I might talk about. There's a lab about web scraping that you'll do. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I wouldn't even say that try is more complex. It's just I haven't taught it. So let's do CSV first, because I've already done a JSON tutorial once. So let's try this. So these are called network save file name instead of file name.json, for example. I don't know. Depends. So let's write a CSV file. So for instance here, let's see how the CSV class works. So basically what you're going to do is you need to open a file. So you go with say open test.csv as test.csv, right? And then you have to do, so let's open it in write mode so that we can add stuff to it. And so then there's two ways to do it. So the first way to do this is you can say csv.reader, or let's say, actually, no, we want writer first. So then we're going to put the test CSV file in. So in order to do this, what you need to do is you open the file, and then what you do, these imports are PI files, yeah. So you open this file in write mode, and then you stick it in the csv.writer constructor. And so csv.writer is a class. And so what kind of things does it do? So myWriter equals this. And so now you can do myWriter dot, ooh, why doesn't it like that? Huh. It doesn't want to tell me. So if you're ever confused about it like I am right now, I think the right way to handle it is to pull up you pull up the CSV documentation. And so here's the writer. It returns a write object responsible for converting the blah, blah, blah. And so let's see here. Writer objects. And then basically, I think you can just use write row. So let's try the write row method. I usually use a dictionary writer, so that's why I don't really know this by heart. And so row. So now let's make our row 3 things, and see what it does. And let's write it 10 times. Right, something like this. And so now let's see what happens. And so remember, if you're using with, you don't have to close the file. Let's see if this explodes. I'm not sure. All right, so it did something. It wrote something, so let's see what happened. Test.csv. Here we go. So, good. So we see there's a problem immediately. Here's the problem. And I don't know if it's obvious, but here's the problem. I guess I could install the CSV plugin. Am I going to do that? Sure. Do it. Okay. Restart PyCharm. Not going to do that during the lecture. Okay. So the issue here is that you see that there's an extra blank line, and that's because when you run the write row method, the CSV file is going to write a new line at the end of every row. And so that's, I mean, it's okay, but it's clearly not what you want, because if you actually did the read on it, so if we do open, say, test.csv with read mode, which you don't have to, as read CSV file, and then what we'll do here is we'll say, what are we going to say? My reader is equal to csv.reader, and we'll throw that in. And then what we'll do is we'll say for line in reader, we'll print out the line. And so, oh, my reader. There we go, my reader. And so now what I want to do is this. And so you see that this is actually causing a problem, right? It's actually causing some kind of issue because every other row is just empty. So that's no good. So here's how to fix it. Done. Okay? So you have to add a parameter to the opening of the file in write mode, when you actually write this CSV file. And you have to add new line is equal to empty. And so what that does is, because write row is going to add its own new line, therefore, you gotta have no additional. Why isn't it end? Because everything in Python is different for every single file. So if you think that print and open are going to work the same way, it doesn't. Well, so if you're going to be using CSVs, then you use these methods, right? Does this work for .text? Yeah, you can put a new line equals blank for .text if you're going to put the new lines in yourself. No additional end lines. So I think it's new line. I could be wrong. It tried to autocomplete to it, so that suggests that it's correct. So let's try this again. Let's run the program. There we go. Look at that. When we look at test.csv, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's doing exactly what you want, right? That's doing exactly what you want. Okay. So here's some CSV test. All right, so now let me show you, and let me run this file. And so, or run that function. So that's basically how to use CSVs. That's it, right? And so, yeah, you basically just have a list and you write it as a write row, and that's it. I mean, it is no more complicated than that. And then to read it, you can just go through it as a for loop. You can also do myReader.read line, I think, if you want, but you don't have to do that. Or I think it's actually read row, but you don't have to do that. You can just use a for loop to go through your file, and that's it. Will it mess things up if they have commas in them? So watch what it does if you have a comma in it. Say, let's say, I have a comma. Yes, I do. Whoops. Okay. Let's do it. There we go. And so you see that it doesn't create a problem, and the reason why it doesn't create a problem is because it puts all the strings in quotes. And so the comma will be safe in there. Of course, you really shouldn't have any commas in your save stuff, because you're going to have area codes which don't have commas. You're going to have phone numbers which don't have commas. They have hyphens. That's really it, right? So you shouldn't have any commas. But no, it doesn't cause a problem, because if you put a comma in a string, it just puts it all inside the quotation mark, so it's okay. As it turns out, the CSV functionality is smart. It is pretty smart. So it won't, you have to really work to do any kind of the CSV injection attack. right? So let me do another version of this, where this time, yeah, so the good news is that it writes and it reads fine. You see here how it pulls out that list. The first element in the list is the string. I have a comma with a comma in it, yes I do, and then it splits it there. It splits it at the appropriate place. So clearly, it is not just writing, it's not just doing a like line dot split on comma, right? It's being a little bit smarter than that. It's running through the line and testing to see if each thing is inside of a string, and if it is, then blah, and if it's not, then blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's do the dictionary version. So let me show you how the dictionary version works. So I'll just copy paste this line here. So you still need the same thing here, except now what we're going to do is we're going to have the header, which is equal to, say this is equal to area code, phone number. Yeah, that's fine, right? And so, and then basically maybe we'll say like connected areas, right? So this is not exactly what you need for your project. This is kind of like a phone and a switchboard all kind of mashed together. So you have to be a little bit more creative for your actual project, but whatever, right? So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to do CSV.dictWrite. So this is going to write dictionaries, and I'll show you what I mean by that in just a second. So this is going to be my writer. And so the first thing I'm going to do, oh yeah, I think I want to do this, and I always forget what the stupid thing is in the dict writer. It's called field names. It's required. Okay. And so the good news is that I'm doing all this looking up stuff for you, so you don't actually have to do it. And so the next thing you have to do is do my writer dot write header. So you got to do this in order to get the headers in, because if you notice, our current test CSV doesn't have any headers. Like, each one of these is an actual row of stuff. So there's no headers in here. There's nothing to indicate what any of this means, right? But the write header will actually just write these three headers in there, so you can actually read it. It becomes more human readable. But now you can't just do this, right? So you can't just do this. This won't work. The reason why it won't work is because it's not a dictionary. So, right, list object has no attribute keys, so it's going to break. So let's try to do this in a better way. So let's do this way. So what you have to do now is basically, if you want to write a row, it's going to be equal to, say, area code. Oh, oops, that needs to be a dictionary now. Sorry, not a list. As I've been saying. 443, phone number, let's say 210-2211, just some simple phone number. Let's delete the hyphen. So you either have a choice. You can either leave it as a number, right, and this will convert it into a number for you in the CSV, or you can leave it with the hyphen and leave it as a string. So I'll do it this way. The area code will be a number, and say the connected areas are going to be 410, like 310, 221, etc. But the thing is that this requires you to only have three, so connected areas. And I'll put this in a list. Now let's see if this works. I'm just curious. And so we get rid of this, and let's write it. Let's see if it works. Well, it did something, right? It did something. Oh, the dictionary test is up here. I'm sorry. I was like, where'd it go? So here it is, right? And so it writes it in as a string. So you might have to do some conversion to a list if you're going to do something like this. But you see that it does actually write it in as a list, and then it writes in your phone number, as a kind of, it's a kind of string, kind of number thing. I think the reason why it's doing this is because it needs it as a, it has commas in it to make the list object. I have a question. How does this load? So let's see, with, open, dictionary test, right? .csv with read mode. And so what we can do now, oops, sorry. And so what we can do now is, what can we do now? I don't know what we can do. Oh yeah, we want to open the file as test CSV read. And so we'll call my reader, right, is equal to csv.dictionaryReader. And that's it, right? And so I think maybe there's a my reader. Is there like a get headers? I guess you could just call it field names. You can print this out if you want to know what the field names are. But if you go like for line in my reader, print out line, right? I think it should print it out as a dictionary. So let's watch what happens, right? Let's watch what happens. There we go. And so now what you can do, for instance, is if you just want to access the area code, you can actually just do area code. Or let's just do, let's just do phone number, right? And so what this will do is it will allow you to do this, and now you're seeing, now of course I'm just using a for loop and I'm blasting in the same thing every time, which is really dumb, but you can see how you could perhaps change all this stuff, and you could use the CSV library to write in the vast majority of data, and then it would be written in a way that what you could do is you could actually read through it, you could even modify it, you could, and then you can have it load in your file, and that's basically how these things work. Okay? So I'll upload this to the, so I lied about exceptions. We didn't do exceptions. I did the CSV thing. I might do a separate JSON tutorial, and I might do another separate CSV tutorial, but I think this is basically all you need, right? If you want to use the CSV library, and you want to do something other than something I've shown you here, you're technically allowed, but let me promise you, you don't actually need to, right? Because there's a huge amount of stuff here that you have now at your fingertips, right? And so remember that CSV just stands for comma-separated values. It's basically just a, field names is just the headers, right? What's the difference between CSV and text? Well, text is completely unformatted. There's no structure, no nothing. But look at a CSV file, right? It definitely has some structure, definitely has something going on in it, right? And you see that obviously it has some structure because the CSV reader understands that structure and pulls it back out, right? In terms of functionality? Well, in terms of functionality, I don't know. You can do a lot of stuff with CSVs I mean, you can do everything with text files, of course, but that would mean that you'd be like rewriting. Yeah, the headers are the keys. Headers, field names, keys, they're all the same. Yeah, and then so that's the difference between text and CSV is really that text is just text. It has no format. You can put whatever you want in it. You have to understand the format. The CSV stuff, on the other hand, is saying you can't put anything, right? You can't put anything in, but we'll take care of most of the work for you, right? The CSV library takes care of most of the data organization, right? It makes it a bit easier because, you know, if you wanted to just do a simple string.split on this, you would accidentally have split on these two things. So you would need more complex code. You know, things would get more complex if you didn't just use these pre-provided libraries. And the reason why I want you to use the libraries, if you want to, is because it will make your job easier, right? The whole point is that if you think, hey, I have a great way to basically make a spreadsheet of this data, then guess what? A CSV is perfect for you. Perfect, perfect, perfect. The JSON stuff is a little harder to read. You can add in some indents to make it a little bit better. But yeah, okay. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'll upload this to the GitHub. So if you want to use this as some starter code, basically you'll understand, like basically everything here what you need now is you need all the switchboards and the phones. That's what the row needs to be. So there needs to be some kind of for loop or some kind of thing that will take your phone numbers, switchboards, whatever, and run them through the for loop and write the rows, right? Or the same thing here, right? So you'll have to configure it so that your data goes into some kind of row, either a dictionary or a list, and then you use the write row function to just stick it into the CSV file. So that's basically that. So let's upload it. Let's commit it, right? Commit file. I mean, right, so each row could be a switchboard or each row could be a phone number or whatever. Like, it, again, there's no restriction on what you have to decide, but you do have to, that's something that you have to choose for yourself. And, yeah. So, let's see here. I will push. Let's see if it gets up there. And so, if you run this, it should create you the two CSVs that I have here. Hopefully it won't break. And yeah, so I'll do a little bit of, I might do something maybe on Wednesday or something, a little JSON tutorial. I'll also post the JSON tutorial that I did in previous semesters, so it's easier to find. I guess I didn't do exceptions today. I always lie about the last topic. I always just think to myself, like, oh, I'll do this last topic, and then I never actually do it. So, okay. I think that's it for today. I hope that I've kind of made the project understandable. Field names are the headers, right? So field names are these header objects, right? Okay. Yeah, I think that's it for today. I'll let all of you go. Hopefully this was helpful. Yeah. Yeah, look at the code. Check it out.